Good evening, everyone, and I'm so happy to be here with you this evening. This is Chima from Go Getter Excel. I believe strongly that I can be heard. I just saw on the chat box that I can be heard. I'm going to share my screen now and let's see if we can see my screen. And say you can see my screen. I'll do that right about now. If you can see my screen, let me know. Right now my screen is not showing. Let me get back to my screen and share it once again. Can someone see my screen? Because it's showing very small here in my end. If you can see my screen, please let me know in the chat box. If you can see my screen, please, I'm waiting for someone to tell me he or she can see my screen. Okay, from your end, you can see my screen. I don't know why it is small in my own end. Okay, so not to worry, I know how to handle that. Okay, so as I said, my name is Chima, and if you are having any question, feel free to ask in the chat room. I'll be glad to entertain your questions. There'll also be time for Q&A. So feel free to go to the chats chat room and ask your questions. And when it is time for Q&A, you can also ask your question to be if the floor will be open for using voice message to ask your question, then that will be it. The moment now my video will go off and we'll be using my screen alone. All right, so let's talk about Excel. In our last class, we talked about uh, the use of sum, the use of average, and we talked about the position. We talked about how to use some functions such as the len, L-E-N, the left, the right, the mid function, and we did some mini projects to show how to use these items. Today, we will be talking about some other functions that you may want to use in Excel. Some of these functions are, we'll be looking at the sum function. So we'll be taking it a little bit higher by looking at some if, some ifs. They'll be looking at the count function, which is count, count A, count if, and count ifs. We'll be looking at some other functions if time permits. All right, so now let's look at this thing here on our screen. Please, can you still confirm that you can see my screen? I just want to be sure that everybody is happy seeing my screen. And please, if you are using a video, please, can you off your video? Thank you so much. All right. Let me look at the message. Someone says they can still see my screen. All right. So thank you so much. I always want to be sure that my viewers can see my screen. All right. All right. So we have these things here. This is a test, and this is the date of the test. These are students that took the test. If you look at it very well, there are 4 students here that took a test. And there are about how many subjects here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 subjects. Each of them took. Let's assign scores to these subjects. So let's say the first person got 50, second test he got 60. Let's say the next one is 70, then there is 80, then perhaps 90. Then maybe this person got 100, then this person got 90. Let me going down, go 80, 70, this is 60, this is 60, 80, 70, 50, 50, 60, 70, 70, 90, and finally 95. All right, so these are the test scores, and you are asked to look for the total score subject by subject. How will you get the total score subject by subject here? Okay, so I'm going to show you something that can help you to get the total subject here. So the first thing you are going to do here is you will start from the first course here. You will hold your shift key, your control and shift key, then your down arrow button. It will highlight all the courses. You copy it, and you go down to where we have subjects. You control alt V and you paste the values. Now these are repetitions. There will be a need for you to remove these repetitions. So what do? You go to your data tab, then there is what they call remove duplicates. You click on remove duplicates. It's asking you to expand the section. I will choose continue with the current selections. Remove duplicates. And now remove the duplicates. Tells me 15 duplicates. We have found 5 unique values remain. I now have 5 values here. So these are the courses that we are taking. Okay. Now I want to look for the score for these courses. Now, if you see it here now, the English language courses are not arranged well in sequentially following each other. So how will you now add all the total scores for all the other courses? Now this is where we will make use of the sum if. What are the syntax for the sum if? You'll be seeing the formula that are formula text. So that the sum if with the equal to sign, because and if is a conditional statement. If is a conditional statement. Now, when there is only one condition, we use sum if. If there are more than one conditions that must be applied at the same time, we will use sum ifs. That's plural. So for now, we'll use sum if because the condition we want to satisfy is we want to know the sum of only one course English language. All right, so let's do sum if. Open a bracket, the range. Now, the range that looking out, you are looking out for. What is that range? We are looking for English language as a subject. Where can we find subject? We'll find subject here. So this is the range. I will click the first cell, hold my Control Shift button, use my down arrow button to select everything. Remember last week we learned about absolutes and relative referencing, and we saw how our references usually shift down when we didn't lock it. So now we're going to be locking this reference so that when we go down in our results, the reference range will not shift. So I will use the absolute referencing. I'll put $sign in both the column and the row. And the fastest way to do that is using the F4 key. So I will go to my Fn button, I will hold it, and I will press my F4 key. And the absolute referencing is applied in the range. Now I have selected my range. I'll put a comma. The next thing is asking me here is the criteria. What is the criteria for your summation? What is the criteria you are looking out for in this sum? The criteria is English. So I will come here and I'll click English. Now, I want to use mixed reference in here because I know I'll be dragging my formula down, and perhaps I might be dragging my formula sideways. But for now, I want to drag it down. So what do? I will want to fix the column. When I fix the column, the row will be free so that the column, this column H, I'll fix it so that if I move from H to I to J, this column will not move. But the row will be free so that I can move from row 4 to row 5 to row 6 to row 7 to row 8. So I will come down here, I will use my Fn key and I will hold my F4 button. I'll press it once, press it again, and that's no. I'll press it the third time, and that's it. So if you notice here, the column is fixed, the row is not. Now that I've fixed my criteria, I will put a comma and I will need my sum range. So now they ask you for the sum range. What range do you want to sum? Your sum range should be the same length with your range. So it means that if your range started from English down to the end there, my sum range will start from this 50 here in the scores. I will hold my Control Shift key and I will press my down arrow button to select Fn button, F4, absolute range. And I will close it with a bracket and I'll hit the enter button and it gives me what I want. This is what I want and it's giving me 270. Now, if you see the formula here, this formula text gives me the process I used, the formula I wrote to get this score. That is the essence of this formula text so that someone who is looking at your work will understand that this is how you got this score. So I'm using it for education purposes. So you see here, the sum if is for one condition and it's asking you for the range. The range is where you are going to be searching for. I'm looking for column C4 down to C23. That is my range. And I locked them with a dollar sign, both column and row. The next thing it asked is for the criteria. The criteria is in column H. H4, English is my criteria. And you see that uh, the next question it asked me, the next argument is the sum range. So the sum range is where the scores are, and you are going to sum all of them. So it means that 270 is the total score for all for English for these 5 students or 4 students. They all had a total score of 270. If I were to drag this thing down, you will see for all the other courses. So you can see here that this is how you use your sum if to get the total score for uh, all the courses. If I were to come here and do a total here, let's say I'm using a total, I want to check if this thing is true. I can come here and say equal to sum. This is what we did last time. I will sum this I4 to I8. Hit the enter button and it gives me 1,445. 1,445. That is the total score for all courses. If I were to verify, I will come here and do my total. Let me say this is the total. And I come here and I'll say sum, open a bracket, 1445. So maybe in case you didn't remember that this is the value, there is a way you can know whether this thing is correct. So you simply come down here and I will say equal to this figure here is equal to this figure here. If they are equal, you will see it return true. If they are not equal, it will return false. It's returning true. So you see here, this shows you here that this is a summary. So this is the long, this side here is the long um, data, but you have now summarized it into a shorter version. So you can now say these students, they had a total score of 1445, and English was 270, Maths 300, and that's. You can also arrange this thing in such a way that you can arrange them in descending order. Now let's see, if we want to arrange these things in descending order, how do we do it? So all we'll now do here is to highlight this rectangle here. I will go to home, I will go to find and filter, and I will go to custom sorts. Now I want to sort them by score. I want the highest score at the top. What will I do? I will come here, sort by score. And here it's saying from smallest to largest. I want to reverse it from largest to smallest. And I will hit my enter button and it has arranged itself. Maths is the top, followed by physics, followed by biology, biology and chemistry, and English. Now, biology and chemistry are 290, 290. But did you see here that biology was written first after chemistry? So it means that those that are having the same ranking, the same order, or the same level of sort, the next level sort is by default alphabetical order. That's why biology comes before chemistry. Now we've talked about sum. Do we have any question? And please, can you still verify that you can see my screen? This is important to me. Verify you can still see my screen. Verify that you have questions or you don't have any question before I go further. I am not seeing any message. So I want to believe that we are hearing me. Okay. I've got one feedback. Feedbacks are important to me. Someone said my voice is breaking. Okay, so this is a good feedback. Okay, it's probably network here. Someone say we can hear you. Beautiful, beautiful. Now let's go to the next one. Now we have seen some if. Now let's say we want some ifs. Some ifs. Now let's look at some ifs here. Let's assume here we are copying um, this same thing here. Let me see. Let me bring it down here. Okay, let me use down here. Let's assume that we copied this here, remove this score, and instead of date, we are looking at students. We're looking at students. Okay, then we are looking at two students. Let's say John and we're also looking at Rita. We're looking at John. We are looking at Rita. Okay. Let's put more. Let's say we're also looking at Bawa. We're also looking at Grace. Okay. How do we do this? We want to find John's math score. It's easy to just go here and select it. It's easy to bring Rita's physics score. We can decide to say, okay, so let's do it this way. Let me put another column here. This is gender. This is a male. This is male. This is another male. This is female. And this is another female. So instead of students, I can say male, male, female, male, female, and male. All right, so let's see how can we get the math score for the male. You know there are two male here. We need to know, we need two conditions. It must be a male, it must also be math. So the next thing to do here is to look at the sum ifs. Sum ifs. Now, after learning sum ifs, I would prefer you to always use sum ifs instead of sum if, because sum ifs can be used for one criteria and more than one criteria. Whereas sum if without the s can only be used for one criteria. Secondly, the syntax, the arguments are slightly arranged differently in sum if and sum ifs. So I would like you to be familiar with sum ifs with the plural and use it always, whether we have one condition or more than one condition, so that you will always be familiar with how the syntax or the arguments are arranged. All right, so we start again. This is sum ifs. This is sum ifs. Open a bracket. See, it starts with the sum range. Remember, in sum if, we ended with sum range. We started with range. But in some ifs, there is nothing like range. There is what is criteria range. So that replaces the range in sum if. We know that that range in sum if is also called criteria range. and we had criteria, which is the only thing that is the thing that is constant here. Some range is also constant, but in some ifs, some range was what we started with. So let's look at it. Some range. I will start with this and go down to this end here. Put it in a locked format, absolute reference. This is the sum range, comma, criteria range 1. So you can have criteria range 1, range 2, range 3, range 4, different criteria. So that's why we use it in more than one criteria. So my criteria range 1, I want to look for male students as my criteria. So where can I find my male students? This is a range. I can find my male students. And we'll now lock this, comma. Now what is criteria 1? I have done the criteria range where I had male and female. Where is my range? Now my criteria. My criteria is this, male. And I will now put it on relative referencing, mixed one here. I will do this 3 times. I have locked the column and I have freed the row. I'll put a comma. Now this is asking me for the second criteria range. Now I'm looking for math subjects. I will go to where I have subjects and I will do the same thing, lock it absolutely. That is my criteria range. Here is math. I'll I'll do the F4 3 times to lock the column and free the row. Then I will close. And what happens here? It gives me 140. 140. 140. Let me copy this here so that we can see what's actually going on. If you see, this is the formula that we had to follow to get this solution. Sum ifs, it starts with the sum range. Start with the sum range. E4 to E23, they are all locked with the dollar sign, comma. Then we have the criteria range. Then the criteria 1. This is criteria 1 range, criteria 1, criteria 2 range, and criteria 2. That's it. So the next we are going to do is let's drag or let's double click. And you see here, the female had physics 155. If you decide that you also want to do male, female, you want to do some, you know, let's do some interesting thing here. Let's do some interesting thing. Let's say this is math. See, it has changed. Physics. The next one is physics. Let me change this one to male. You see, it keeps changing. Okay. I'll go to biology. Let me change this one to female, or let me copy female here. And the next one here, chemistry. Change this to male. And the next one is English. I change this to female. So you can see here that if I were to do a sum of all of these, see what it's going to give to me. It's going to still give to me the the thing we got before, 1455, showing you that everything was used here. But we have now separated them, the scores, into male and female. The male got this, the female got this, the male got this other one in physics, the female got this other score. So you can see the various uses for some if and some ifs. Okay, so I would like you to use some ifs always, because you can get the same values here using some ifs and using some if. But in this case, you can only get this value using some ifs. And so some ifs is an expanded version of some if. Now let's look at count. Let's look at count. Count and count. Let's look at the count function. At count. Now what does count do? Count will count the number of values that you have. So let's see something here. We have count. Open a bracket, touch this first one here, and you lock it with F4. You close the bracket. It will count all these values and give you the answer. It tells you this is 20. 20 values are there. Now let's see something else. If you now say count, and you decide to count here to this place, and you take it down, you lock it. Normally, when you close it, it is supposed to give you how many? 40 values. Watch what it will give you. 20. Why is it giving you 20? Where is the problem coming from? Let's investigate further. Let's say you do count again. You decide to count only English down to physics here. Lock it with brackets, close it. You're supposed to get 20, right? Let's see. It gives you 0. So now you now see that your count does not count text. Your count counts only numbers. Now, assuming this 50 was written this way with an apostrophe, hit enter, it is now a text. And so it has changed to 90. Does not count. So if you want you to count this 50, counts it. Now that okay. Sorry, I just realized that I went off. So maybe can someone in the chat room remind me where they had me last before I went off, so that I will know where I will continue. Can someone remind me where you had me last, so that I can know where I went off, because at the time I think I went off. Okay, so I would like to take the The use of count. Okay, someone said the use of count. All right. All right. So I will go to the use of count again. I will start it all over again. So let's remove these things here. Count. Now let's look at count. What does count do? Equal to count. You are supposed to be able to count your values. So the first value we are going to use here is from 50 down to 95. Let's close our bracket, and it tells us that we have 20 values there. 20 values are there, and it's correct. Now, we decided to expound this thing further, and we'll say count, open a bracket. We now start from D4 and go to E4 and go all the way down. So we are counting from D4 to E23. If we had 20 when we counted from E4 to E23, but now we are now starting from D4, we should be having 40, right? Look at what it will tell you. When we hit the enter button, it will tell you, surprisingly, 20. So what did it count and what did it not count? Of course, we knew that it counted the column E values. But let us be very sure that this column D was really not counted. And let's see why. Let's try another count and say count, open a bracket. Let's do only the D values now and go to this end. Close your bracket, hit enter, and it tells you 0. So you know that it didn't count anything in the subjects, it only counts the scores. So what does that tell you? Your count function work only when you are using numbers. It counts values, numbers, numerical values, not text. Let's see a typical example now. If I were to change this 50 from a number to a text by putting an apostrophe here, you see here my count is now 19, showing you that this 50 was not counted. If I do the same thing to this 60, it will not count it. It's now 18. So it tells you that your count, the count function, counts only numbers and not text. Now, how do we solve the situation where we want to count both numbers and text? A, we now do something called the count A. Let's try the count A. We say count A, open a bracket. You, you try the same thing here down to this place, close the bracket, hit the enter button, the same 20. Now that means count A counts numbers. Let's see if it will count text. Let's try the second experiment. Count A, open a bracket, go from here down to here and down. If it gives us 40, then it means it counts both text and numbers. And it gives us 40, meaning count A means count all. It counts both text and numbers. Now that's a good thing if you want to count your values. You don't want to count only numbers, you want to count both numbers and text. Use count A. All right, so there's another thing we should know about count. So let's look at count and see other things we can count. We have count blank. Let's try count blank. Now, let's look at count blank. I open the bracket and I decide to click here, down here, F4 to F8. and I close my bracket, it's 5. It means that it counts this blank. If you were to mistakenly use count blank, you were to use count blank and you decided to go from here down here to this place and you close the bracket, it will still give you 5 because it is counting only the blank cell. Unlike count R, let's see counter again. Let's look at counter and see what counter will do in this situation. I decided to go from here, here. Let's see if it will count 5, 10, 15. Let's see whether it will give me 15. It's giving me 10. So it means that your count A counts all non-blank cells. As long as there are something inside, then it is counted. Now let me shock you now. Sometimes you might be saying something like this, equal to. Now, when I do this sign, equal to apostrophe quotation mark, it means that I don't want anything to be there. But now when I did that, can you see that counter has made this 11? If I decide to drag this, counter says it's 15. So it means that the counter is looking at this range, this 15 range, and is counting them as 15. But you will say that there is nothing here. This is blank, this is blank, this is blank. But why is it giving me 15? And if you look at count blank, here it's giving me 5. Count blank, here it's still giving me 5. So blank is telling you that there is nothing here. Blank, no, nothing is written here, and it's correct here. When you did your count blank alone, this is count blank, this is count blank. When you counted everything here, it's still telling that here is blank. But when you did your counter, it's telling you to count all non-empty cells. So you can bear me witness that a cell can be blank, but it is not empty. This means that that apostrophe that you put there, that equal to quotation sign you put there, made it a non-empty cell. And so counter will count it. But because there is no value there, blank, it is still blank. It's being counted as blank, and it's still counted as if there is something there because it's not an empty cell. These are some of the things you should know about count. Count. All right, so now let's play with dates. Let's play with dates now. There are some dates here, and I decided to put some of these dates. Let's say, let me copy this text here again, once again, and take it to another place here. All right, so I decided to do the date of test. And I decided to do students. And I decided to do subject, another subject. I say score. Okay, so sorry, I want to play further by putting students here again. Now let's say that I want John, student, and I want Rita, student. And I'm looking for math for John. I'm looking for biology for Rita. I want to know the total score, and I'm looking at these dates. I'm looking at these dates. I'm looking at these dates. Okay, let me still bring this down. We're just playing with Excel. Okay, now let's see something. Some ifs, that's some ifs, because we're looking for more than one condition. Open a bracket, sum range. This is a range that we are summing. Lock it, it's locked. Criteria range 1. The first criteria is the date of test. Lock it, criteria 1. Come here, we'll lock it, we'll press it 3 times. Okay, comma, criteria range 2, students. Lock it, criteria 2, come here, and we'll do it 3 times. Comma, criteria range 3. We're not concerned about gender now. Subjects. Lock it, criteria 3. Okay, sorry. I will have to um, undo some of this. Okay, criteria 2, John, comma, criteria range 3. I will still come here again. Yes, I will lock it, comma, criteria 3 is now Rita. We're just trying to see what is going to happen. Comma, criteria range 4, subjects, lock it, criteria 4, this. All right, so let's close the bracket. Hopefully it's going to give us an answer, 0. Why did it give you a 0? Let's see. Because all the conditions did not match. When maths was taken, the same date was not the date that um, um, the date and the courses did not match. So, and there is also another problem. Let me fix this problem again. Let's do this one more time. Let's look at, okay, instead of joining Rita here and John on the same score, let's do each of them one by one. Sum ifs, open a bracket, date of test, a sum range is here, lock it here, criteria range 1 as subjects and date of test, right? Yes, you lock it, comma, criteria 1 is here, you also lock it 3 times, comma, then the next criteria Criteria range 2, I'm looking at John, and let's look at John as criteria range 2 here. Okay, so here I'll lock it again, comma. When it comes to criteria 2, I'll click at it here. But this time around, I will not lock, because if I move to the next side, it should give me, it should move from column I to column J. So that's the point. Comma. Then the next one should be subjects, mathematics. I'll go to criteria range 3, subjects, lock, comma, criteria, maths. I want to lock this time around. Close the bracket, hit the enter button. It gives me 0 here. That's fine. This is because John did not take maths on August 1, but in August 4, he took maths. So that's it. So if I were to come here and put this score here again, and I drag this to this place here, and I drag this down, you see it gives us for Rita. Rita took biology August 10, and she got 80. So you see here, I can come here and let me look at other courses here. I can come here and say chemistry. I can come here, I'll say chemistry. Okay, so let me put the chemistry here and put back the maths where it was. I can come here and look at English. I can bring English and I put it down here. Okay, English is here. I can come here. Um, I can still put English here. Okay, I can take biology here. Okay, I can take math here. Put the same thing here. And take this biology here. Put it down here. August 11, they had chemistry. I can come here, put chemistry. And August 12, they both had physics. And come down here and I put physics. So you can see that you have arranged that of John and that of Rita. So you can now sum them here. You can say this is sum. Sorry. Sum. You're summing all the scores for John. And you can drag and get that for Rita. So I can come here and say this is John's score. John's score. This is Rita's scores. So you can see how you can get and play with the sum function, and you can also count the number of courses that John did, the number of courses that Rita did, and all that. So we have seen how to do the sum function, how to do the sum if, how to do the sum ifs, which is plural, how to do the count function, how to do the count a, how to do the count if, sum ifs, count ifs. So it is good for us to know what if really does. If can stand on its own. Okay? So let's look at an example. Let's look at an example. I can say here equal to if, open a bracket. When we look at if, we are looking at three arguments. Three arguments. The first argument is called a logical test. A logical test. It, you have to now create a test. Then what will be the value if that test is true? What will be the value if it is false? So let's look at it. So if logical test, and I'll say English greater than 50, comma, that is my test. I want to check if K2, all the subjects written in K2 is greater than 50. Okay, no, the scores here, look at the scores. So it will not be K2 if M2 is greater than 50. What will I have if it is greater than 50? I will say pass, and I want to type a text. I will start with a quotation mark. I will start my text inside a formula with a quotation mark, and I will say pass. I'll close it with a quotation mark. So Excel understands that this thing here is not a function, not a cell, but a text. Now, this is the value it should tell me if it is greater than 50. That is the value if true, comma. What is the value if false? And I will say fail. Close the brackets. Hit the enter button. So that means John failed. John failed English, and let's see the others. He passed. If I were to copy this down to the next page, it means that Rita passed everything here because all her score were greater than 50. So you can see that if gives you a condition. We can combine the if with, we can do two logical tests. We can do two logical tests. Let's see how we can do two logical tests here. We can say if, okay, can do more than one logical test. Let's say if this score is greater or equal to 90, comma. So if a score is greater or equal to 90, so that means it's between 90 and 100. It means that that person has gotten an A. Open a bracket, and you open a quotation mark, and you type A, and you close it, comma. Value if false. So if this is false, we will say another if, open a bracket. So this is what we call a nested if inside an if. So if this M2 is greater or equal to 80, comma, let's call it a B. Close the bracket. Remember, we have opened two brackets. We have not closed any. Value if false, we still want to get another grade. So we can do another if. So remember that there is two if inside that original if. If this M2, we are still referring to this M2, is greater or equal to 70, comma, let's say this grade is C. A, comma, value if false. We want to get a D. So we don't have a false here yet. We will say if M2 greater or equal to 60, comma, what do we have? Value if true. Let's say here we'll call this one D. Value if false, let's do an E. So we'll go another if M2 greater or equal to 50, comma, what is the value if true? I want you to put an E, comma, what is the value if false? So anything below 50, we want it to be F. So that is the only condition that is left. So instead of saying another if, we will now put our value if false. So our value if false will now be put as F. We'll close the bracket. How many brackets did we open? We opened 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 brackets. So we're going to close it with 5 brackets. And how will you know that your bracket is complete? By the time you see the last one as a black bracket, then it is complete. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, and watch the next one. It will be black, 5. So it's complete. And you hit the enter button. Wow, there's a problem with this formula. Let's see what the problem is. They say there's a problem with this formula. I wonder what the problem is. So let's repeat it again. Sorry, how did I get here? Okay, let's repeat this formula. I will start again. If this, sorry, if, open a bracket, this score is greater or equal to 90, give it an A. Otherwise, go back to another if. This same thing is greater or equal to 80, give it a B, or go to the next one. If this same one here, let's say, is greater or equal to 70, let's say give it a C. Oh, 70, comma, give it a C. Otherwise, go the next one. If this same one here greater or equal to 60, give it an E. Close. Then go to the next one. If this one here is greater equal to 50. Oh, sorry, this should be D, not E. This is D. Give this an E. Value if false, give it an F. Close 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fine. So you see here, this man scored E because he had a 50. If you drag this one here, this person got an A because this is 100. If I were to drag this down, you'll see the various scores that they all had. So this is showing you your grade letters. So you can use your if function, your nested if, to achieve all of this. So today, we've learned the if function, the sum if, the count ifs, the count if, and what have you. In our next class, we'll be learning much more than the if function. We'll be learning how to use other functions that can go with the if. So for now, let's stop here so that we can digest what we've just learned and practice using this in our work. So I don't know at this juncture if anyone has a question. Let me look at the chats. Let me look at the chats. Someone say I need a replay of this class. Of course, the replay will be coming. Someone was correcting my reference for number 80. I think there was something wrong before. I've corrected it now. Who else who have a question to ask? This time around, you can use your can use the voice feature to ask. If you
Okay,
want
good
to
evening,
ask,
Chima.
good evening.
I asked a question in the chat room. Okay, let me repeat the question again. So there were times you locked three times. Other times you just locked once. So what's the criteria for locking three times? Why do we lock two times sometimes?
Okay, so thank you so much for that question. Let's go back to our spreadsheet and let's look at this screen. Now, if I were to do an equal to, and I say sum, and I decide to come here and I do this 3 here, this 5, and I decided to lock all by pressing the F4 key, everything is locked here, right? And I close it. What it means here is I have locked both the row and the column, meaning that no matter how you move up or down or side, this range will not move. So this is called absolute referencing. So let me close it and hit the enter. This is 350. If I were to drag this here, it will still give me 350. If I drag further, 350. I drag down, 350. This is because it is referencing this. So that dollar sign is holding it in place so that no matter how you move, it will not shake. Now, if I were to do something like this, if I were to come here now and do this, sorry, I need to do sum first. Sum, and I do this. Let's say I'm summing these two, and I decide to do this. 1. Now, I am not locking the column. I am locking the row. So that means I'm locking row 2. What will happen here? Hit enter. This is 110. If I drag it down, I'm still getting 110. Why? Because this kind of referencing is still referencing these two upside here. If I were to bring it down, I will still get 110. But look at this. If I bring it to this side here, I'm getting 190. Now, because this style, I didn't lock the column. So it moves from M to N and it's adding this thing up. But because I locked the row, it's still giving me 190. It's still referencing just these two rows, but the column shifts. Now look at another type of referencing. Now let's say I say sum, still looking at this two here, this two. Now, sorry, 1, 2, 3. What I have done is I have locked the column. I have locked M column. So if I shift it to N, it will not shift, but I have not locked the row. Look at what is going to happen now. I'll hit enter. I have 110. The moment I go down, I have 130. I go further down, I have 150. Why did I get 130? It's because it has shifted one cell down. Why did I get 150 here? Is because it has shifted 2 cells down. But look at what happened when I go to the column. To still give me 110. This one will still give me, if I want to even drag, this one will still give me the same thing here because it is still referencing what I was locked. So you see, the choice of whether to use your dollar sign once or twice or 3 times depends on if you want to lock the cells or if you want to free the column or the row. Now, in the case of this example here, I had to lock this A2 and A3. Why? A2 and A3, I don't want this to shift. So I use an absolute referencing. Even here, E2 to E21, these scores, I don't want them to shift either up or down or sideways. So I had to lock them absolutely. Here, I didn't want this to shift when I drag my mouse to the from John's scores to Rita's score. If I drag, if I didn't lock it absolutely, instead of having August to shift to students, I had to lock it. Now, if you look at H2, I because B2 and to B21, I had to lock it because I don't want it to shift from John when I'm moving, then it goes to male and female. No. But when you see I2, I didn't even lock anything. I didn't lock anything. You know why? Because I don't want to lock the row. Because I know if I shift from M to N, I want this I to shift from I to J. If I shift from M to N, I want this column I to shift from I to J. So I didn't lock. If I go from 2 to 3, let it also do the same thing. So I didn't lock. Look at this D2 to D21. These are subjects. I don't want them to shift. So I lock them absolutely. But look at K2. So if I'm moving from N to M, M to N, I want it to move from K to L. And so I didn't lock it. So you have to be very proficient, know what you want to do. It will take you some trials before you'll be able to know which one you like to lock. For now, since you are beginning, it will take you some few times for you to get the hang of it. But with constant practice, if you just think about it, if you if what I usually say is, if you're going to be moving the formulas from top to bottom, if you're going to be dragging it from top to bottom, then the rows should be free for your results. If you are going to be moving it from left to right, then the column should be free. But there are certain times that your source, if you don't want your source where you're taking your answers to move, then you have to look at absolute referencing. So, but it will take you a while of practice to be able to understand which one you are going to lock and the kind of lock you're going to do for it. I don't know if that answers the question.
It perfectly does. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Who else has any question to ask? Okay, so I believe that at this point, we have no question to ask. So we will all await the recording of this video that will be sent to you. All right, so don't forget what we learned last week. Combine your knowledge of last week to this week so that you can increase your knowledge and excel. Until next week, when I come your way again, this is Chima from Go Getter Excel signing out. See you next week. Bye bye.